built a machine to quantify morality by measuring lies, making guilt visible, and engineering truth in real time. But I think the systems we built to reveal the truth ended up exposing something else. Not deceit, but our deep discomfort with uncertainty. Imagine sitting in a dim room, wires strapped to your chest, a cuff squeezing your arm, a pen scratching jagged lines across a moving strip of paper. Every breath, every beat of sweat, every tiny shift in your heartbeat recorded. The examiner asks a question. You answer. The machine trembles. And suddenly, your honesty, your entire credibility, isn't in your own hands. It's in the lines on a graph. This is the polygraph, celebrated as a lie detector, used in game shows, job screenings, and police interrogations. It was supposed to be a tool for justice. But here's the truth. The polygraph doesn't detect lies. It detects stress. And our faith in it says more about human psychology and our deep hunger for certainty than about science itself. Technically, the polygraph isn't detecting lies. It's detecting physiological change. Here's what's actually happening. When someone takes a polygraph, they're connected to a set of sensors measuring 3 key signals. Number 1, heart rate and blood pressure, measured using an inflatable cuff, similar to one you would see in a doctor's office. A higher heart rate and a higher blood pressure means higher stress. Number 2 is respiration, via 2 pneumatic tubes that are strapped around your chest and abdomen. Increased blood flow throughout your body means an increased oxygen demand, which means your respiration rate goes up. And number 3 is skin conductivity, which is measured through galvanic skin response sensors that are attached to your fingertips. When you have adrenaline in your system, you tend to sweat a bit more, which makes your skin a little bit more electrically conductive. These 3 metrics are continuously recorded as the subject answers a series of questions. Before the test begins, the examiner establishes a baseline by asking a series of neutral or known questions. They might ask me, is your name Olivia? Or are you sitting down? From these, they'll build a control chart of your physiological calm. Then, as the real questions begin, the ones tied to guilt or deceit or emotional tension, the examiner looks for spikes, a sudden increase in heart rate, sweat, a breathing irregularity. The idea is simple. Lying is stressful, and stress leaves a trace. But the human body doesn't only lie under threat of exposure. It also reacts to shame and fear and self-doubt, and even just being watched. So the polygraph isn't reading your honesty. It's reading your humanity. The most striking thing about polygraphs isn't about how often they're right. It's about how often people believe they are. The data here is definitely prone to error, but polygraph accuracy seems to hover around 60 to 70%, or barely better than chance. In adversarial contexts, false positives skyrocket. And when the polygraph is seen as infallible, confession rates soar. Innocent people, terrified of failing the machine, sometimes admit to crimes that they didn't commit. Meanwhile, practiced deceivers, people trained in emotional regulation or psychopathy in general, can often pass without issue. Anxiety mimics guilt. This is where the system fails. It treats the signal as the truth. But we don't have a pattern of physiological responses that are unique to deception, which is where we get concerns about test validity. Blaise Pascal said, "The heart has its reasons, of which reason knows nothing." And I think that fits here quite well. Stress might be the reason that your body gives a certain signal, not deception. Someone anxious about being disbelieved could show the same spikes as someone lying, and someone in control of their physiological responses, someone rehearsed, or someone confident in their story, even if it's wrong, could stay perfectly calm. It's not really a test of honesty or truth. It's a test of belief. The more you trust the machine, the more power it has over you. The ethics of the polygraph are tangled. Defenders argue that it's a useful psychological lever, that the fear of being caught will deter dishonesty. Critics see it as coercion, an abuse of power that preys on emotion rather than evidence. Some ethicists argue that its use in interrogations borders on manipulation, especially when subjects don't fully understand its inaccuracy. They'll argue that a machine with that error margin should not have the power to ruin lives. Others will point out that in the right hands, it can spark meaningful admissions, not because of the hard science that it's recording, but because of psychology. I'm fascinated by the contradictions in our opinions on polygraph evidence and other forms of evidence. We have plenty of rules against oath helping, against admitting consistent out-of-court statements by witness, against character evidence, expert evidence. I'm not a lawyer, clearly, but for example, you can't have an expert witness testify about something that should be a matter of public opinion, or that the public can sort out for themselves. If it's within our understanding or our experience, we don't need an expert to corroborate it. But what is a polygraph telling us outside of someone's credibility? Outside of their ability to keep some sort of cogent narrative earnestly? You can form your own opinion about whether or not someone is lying, about their trustworthiness. You don't need an expert for that. I guess philosophically, do we want to live in a society where truth is determined by physiological metrics rather than human testimony and evidence and reason? There is a middle ground to be found here, though, between those wholly in favor of and against the use of the polygraph. Maybe the polygraph isn't good or evil, it's just revealing. Not of lies, but of how easily we surrender our agency to authority, how quick we are to allow something external to tell us who we are. Philosophically, what we're talking about here is epistemic trust, the belief that knowledge can be measured and verified through external systems. But I don't think truth is mechanical. I think it's relational. It depends on intent, and on emotion, and on context. Things that no needle can trace. Psychologically, there's also something else at play. The guilt-anxiety confusion. In cognitive psychology, this blurring is tied to interoceptive misattribution, when we misread our internal sensations. We feel our heart racing, and we assume we must have done something wrong. We mistake vigilance for guilt. So even the body, the most intimate system of feedback, can be a poor narrator of truth. But it's not always the cross-wiring of signals. Sometimes we really just don't know what we believe. Nietzsche said, "We are unknown to ourselves, we men of knowledge, and with good reason. We have never sought ourselves. How could it happen that we should ever find ourselves?" In this context, it's a reminder that self-report is slippery. If we can't even fully know ourselves, how can a machine tell if we lie? From an engineering perspective, the polygraph is a feedback system with poor calibration. Too many variables, too little isolation, and it's measuring inputs that correlate with fear, not falsehood. But I think that maybe that's the point. Maybe we keep building systems like this because we'd rather be certainly wrong than uncertainly right. Humans have a bias towards predictability. We'd rather live with a comforting fiction than face the randomness of reality. That, I think, is death denial in disguise. That desire to impose order on chaos. If the world is measurable, then maybe our fears are too. Every system, whether mechanical or emotional, relies on trust. Without belief, no data has meaning. That is why the placebo effect works. Belief changes physiology, and expectation becomes outcome. But the reverse is also true. The nocebo effect occurs when disbelief itself is what causes harm. The polygraph only works in the same way that belief does. If we believe that it can read us, we start to behave as though it can. Our body obeys our story. That's what makes it dangerous and beautiful, because it shows us that even the most flawed system can reveal something profound. That truth, for most of us, isn't about data. It's about faith in others and in systems and in ourselves. The polygraph doesn't expose liars. It exposes believers. It shows how far we'll go to prove that something inside of us is measurable, that guilt has a shape, that fear has a frequency. And it reminds us that the systems that we build to test truth often reveal the limits of what truth even means. And maybe that's the ultimate confession, that the lie detector was never really about lies. It was about us and our endless need to be seen and understood and forgiven by the systems that we trust to keep us honest. Thanks for watching. If you're still here, please leave a comment. I would love to chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts.